Okay, if you've watched my last video on this Gravely L8 walk-behind tractor, you see that I got this running for the first time since I've had it. It did smoke some, blue smoke, burning oil. So this will be the start of diagnosing it and seeing what the issue is and what's causing the blue smoke and how to go about and fix it. So as I mentioned in my last video too, I didn't have the proper adapter for my compression gauge to check this. This takes a 7/8 thread. My compression gauge only had a 14 thread for a modern spark plug, 14 millimeters. So I got this adapter. This is made for adapting a 14 millimeter plug to a 7/8 thread, so you can use a modern spark plug. I know the Gravely parts sites sell these adapters, but this one came from an antique tractor site, because these 7/8 plugs are also used in Model Ts and old antique tractors. Like I've got a 1923 Fordson tractor which uses that same plug. So they make these adapters to run modern plugs in those engines as well. Compression check gauge has a O-ring in it, so it only needs to be finger tight. Okay, got the spark plug wire disconnected. Let's see what we've got. Now I haven't cleaned out the starter mechanism yet. You clean the grease out of it. It doesn't catch every time. But let's see what we've got. Okay, so if you can see that, well, I got about 50 psi of compression. Not real great. Let's drain that off. Make sure everything's tight here. Check it one more time. Yeah, 50 psi of compression. I'm kind of surprised it ran at that. So now I'll have to, at this point, now that the compression is low, I'm going to have to pull the head. See if it's a leaking valve, see if it's a wore bore, see what the issue is causing this low compression. Well, I misspoke a little bit. I said I was surprised it ran on 50 psi on the compression check. I do have a 1957 Massey Harris 50, the 4-cylinder Continental. That was very low on power, and that was running on between 40 and 45 psi in most of its cylinders. And I rebuilt that. Of course, that's a wet sleeve engine, so that's a little different animal than this, but. No, I'm not certain if this head's been off in quite a while. It's pretty rusty. Let's see what we've got in here. Grab my mallet. Okay. Oh, look at that. Popped right off. Well, it's definitely been burning oil for a while. Let me grab a wrench, bring that cylinder to the top. Okay, let's rotate this piston up to the top of its stroke here. Of course, the neighbor's going to start mowing his lawn. 7 o'clock at night. Impulse on the magneto just clicked, so that's working good still. You can see the carbon on top of this piston. Okay, let's see what we've, if there's any kind of markings on here. I've worked on Kohlers and Briggs and Stratton engines before, and they usually got a mark on them, you stamped, 20 thou, 30 thou. Yeah, see how gummy that is. A lot of burnt oil. Oh, I got a slot in the piston. Don't even need to measure that. It's gonna have to come apart, be bored, and an oversized piston put in there. Okay, the only question we've got now is what size pistons we're going to have to get. See if we can see anything on this. Something written down there. Okay, right here on the piston, probably can't see it, it says STD. So this is a standard bore piston. So original piston to this engine. So now it'll have to come apart. I'm going to have to check how wore the bore is, see if I can do just a 20 or a 10 thou oversized piston, or if we need to go to a 20 thou oversized piston. Just to give you an idea of the play in here, the slop in the piston, it really needs to be taken apart to be measured properly, but we'll see what kind of feeler gauge we can get down in here. Well, there's a 12 thousandths right there. I believe the spec clearance on this is 3 to 6 thousandths, but don't quote me on that. No, this isn't a very accurate way of checking it, but if you can get something big in there, like that 20 thou will almost go in. So it's pretty wore. There you go, 18 thou feeler fits between the top of the piston and the bore. Granted, this is probably one of the that's probably one of the lesser wore spots on the piston on the cylinder, because the rings don't come up this high, but proper way to measure it is take it apart. So that's the next step. We'll give it a measure and see what size we come up with. Okay, so I don't have a bore gauge to measure this. You can see the oil running down the back of that cylinder there. So I got some stare at telescoping gauges, but they don't go up big enough. So I've got some Asian telescoping gauges. Got one that goes big enough in that set, so we'll see what we get. So I'm just taking a little mineral spirits here, giving it a clean. Bore gauges are very subjective. You know, they depend a lot on feel and getting them just right aligned in the bore and on the high spots, or getting on the diameter, getting square this way, and getting on the diameter on these ends here. So we'll see if we can get a decent reading here. Feels decent. The old Lufkin 3 to 4 mic out here. Don't want to put too much pressure and actually collapse these with this. I'm sure lots of people are yelling at me right now, but yeah, see, I'm only getting 3 and 2. 253. But that would be the spec for a good cylinder. So I think I'm not getting a good reading here. Let's try to go as low as we can in here. So I'm getting 250, 255 there. I just don't know if I'm getting a good reading on this. Let's try another gauge. Okay, so this is a Mitsutoyo inside mic. Well, this is also subject to getting it perfectly aligned in there, but we'll see if this agrees with them telescoping gauges or not. So I got it set up. It'll read 3 to 3.5. So I'll get down in here and tend to have a little better luck using these, but I really need to get some bore gauges, I guess. I'm gonna be doing a lot of this stuff. So I think I've got a decent reading there. Well, that also reads 3 inches, 255 and almost 256. I don't know if you can focus on that or not. So if anything, we'll probably need a 10 over bore on this new piston, but we'll have to pull it all apart, clean it, measure everything up, go from there. I pulled the engine out the back of the Gravely here and took the cylinder off, doing some checks here. And the last video I shot, I was sitting on the exhaust side of the cylinder, and I didn't look over and see that there is some scoring on that exhaust side of the cylinder. Just enough I can get my fingernail into some of the scratches. Probably won't show up on camera, but I'll post a still photo of it. while it is scored up, the largest number I can find, measuring the bore diameter with my telescoping gauge and micrometer, is 3 inches to about 3 inches 258. The bore should be around 3 inches 254, 3 inches 255, somewhere in that area. So it's not all that oversized. Of course, the scratches are deeper. The ends of the telescoping gauge aren't going to go down in the scratches. So I've got to decide what size oversized piston I should order. Being that it's getting close to 10 thousandths oversized, I know a 10 thousandths oversized piston won't allow the bore to clean up. And with the scratches, I'm not even sure a 20 will clean up. So I'm going to have to go at least 30, maybe even 40 thousandths over. 40 thousandths over is the largest oversized piston they offer. Now I could try to bore this out myself on my mill. First issue we've got is this cylinder. The cylinder is, the bore is, we'll call it 7 5/16, about there. Well, the quill on my Bridgeport only has a 5-inch stroke on it. It does have the auto feed, but then I'd have to try to bore it in 2 steps with. You might get away with it on a nice solid jig bore machine, but I probably would end up with some kind of step there between the transitions on the Bridgeport. So I'm going to have to send this cylinder out to the machine shop, have them bore it. And besides, I don't have a honing machine either. That's something I'd like to get one of these days, is like a Sun honing machine where I can do nice round straight bores. You could get one for the end of run on the end of a drill, one of those 3 stoned hones, but those are I use mainly for just knocking the glazing off the inside of a cylinder. If you're not going to rebore it, and just put some new rings in there and refresh the cylinder. Try to do any stock removal with them. They tend to not cut a very round cylinder, and they can also bell mouth ends of the cylinder if you're not careful. So here's this piston. You see this piston took more damage than the cylinder did. Interesting thing on these Graveleys is they've got this expansion slot cut which faces the exhaust side. So I guess they figured the exhaust side was hotter, so they put a expansion slot in the piston. So before I go ordering parts, like I said, I'll talk to the machine shop. I could have them bore it just to clean it up and see what it takes, and then order a piston based off of there and have them finish boring it. But I'll have to just discuss it with them. But I don't want to get charged twice for boring a cylinder twice, because they're going to have to put it on their machine and take it off and then put it back on there to bore it to final size and hone it. So I'll have to call them up and explore that with them. And also I want to make sure I don't need to order any other parts for the lower end of this motor. Now this rod is virtually no side play in. I mean, I can feel a little bit there. And up and down play, I really don't feel anything there either. But I'm going to put some indicators on it just to double check it. I'll also split these cases. I can't feel any play in this crank here, any radial play. There is some axial play here. I'll have to measure that and see if that's in spec, and shim it up if it isn't. But I'll take it apart, take a good look inside the engine. You know, if I'm doing this, I want to make sure I catch any other any other issues, but as of right now it doesn't look like it needs any bearings in the bottom end. At this point it's worth taking apart and double checking. Maybe spend a little extra money on the bottom end if needed, because I don't want to spend this money on the top end just to have something go out. I don't know how long they used them for, but if it was the entire production line or not, but they had a brass valve guide on the exhaust side. So if it's got a brass valve guide, then I'm going to be pretty certain that this motor is all original. So it's got some wear in it, but if it's, you know, if it was made in 1965, so you know we're talking over 50 years of running, so it's probably not in bad shape for being original and being that old. Looks like at least somebody kept up with oil changes and from the shape the bottom end is. So I've got the cases split on this engine for this Gravely tractor. Everything on the inside looks pretty decent. I mean, there's not even a lot of sludge in here from the oil. Everything looks pretty good. There's not hardly any wear on any of these timing gears, these valve gears. The bearings feel good on both the shafts. The rod bearings feel good. So I think this is a good candidate just to rebuild the top end. Now that I do have it apart this far, I will be replacing the seals on both shafts. There's a seal in this cover, and then there's also a seal that goes on this shaft off this cam here that runs the magneto. So I'll change those two seals. Maybe I'll do some more measurements on here and try to do some with the indicator, see if I can figure out how bad that bore really is, and go from there. I'll probably just end up ordering a 30 thousandths over and roll the dice, so to speak, and hope it cleans up. There is a 40 thousandths oversized piston, but I don't want to go up to a complete full-size oversized unless I have to. Is if something happens in the future, that gives a 10 thousandths to re-clean up that bore and rebuild this upper end one more time before it's got to be sleeved. So everything came apart. Everything came apart pretty decent on this head, except on the exhaust side. I do have one broken off screw. Not surprising on the exhaust side. As you see, it did break off, protruding, so I've had some oil soaking on it. I'll see if I can put some vice grips or something on there and grab that and get it to come free. So as far as a parts list, you're probably talking said piston, rings, the intake valve here. I took it off. You see there's some slight damage to this groove here. It's wallowed out a little bit and there's some burrs on there. I actually had to file that off to get it through the guide. So because that's wore out, that's where this keeper goes to hold the valve spring. So it's pretty sloppy. So I'll put a new intake valve in it. The valves are about $12 right now. Since I'm doing the intake valve, I might as well do the exhaust valve, do the valve guides, do a full top end rebuild. They do offer a non-bronze exhaust valve now, which is, I'm told, is a superior, a non-brass exhaust valve guide, which is superior to the brass one. and which is what we use in all newer small engines like this. So I'll probably get that and have the machine shop replace those guides while they're at it. You know, it won't cost a whole lot more while they're in there doing the bore to replace the guides and recut the valve seats a little to freshen them up. One last final check before we order parts and send this to the machine shop. I'm going to see how flat these pieces are. Now I didn't clean up these top sides very well. I blew them off so I didn't have any loose debris to fall on my granite stone here. But I cleaned the bottom side off, rubbed them with a sharpening stone just to knock the little high spots around the bolt holes down, get them sitting pretty flat. So looking at the head here, it's got a little, you feel a little rock in it in this direction, so we know we're open. We're open in this direction, not sitting flat. Now see, I can't, even rocking it, I can't quite get a tooth thou feeler underneath this. So it's fairly flat, even though it's got a small rock in it. Here's a thou and a half. Now see, a thou and a half, I'm just getting it. I'm just getting that thou and a half underneath there. So this head's pretty flat. Less than 2 thousandths anyways. So here's the cylinder. Same thing. I don't know if you can hear that. There's a little rock there too. I got the exhaust side towards you. Now there's 2 thousandths. Same thing on the exhaust side. That 2 thou feeler goes right underneath that exhaust face. And even rocking it, it's just starting under the intake side, and it's good at least halfway around the cylinder, but there's a spot where I'm getting a 2 thou in there again, right around the exhaust side. So that exhaust side seems to be warped. Eighth thou. There, we're just getting it right in the very end of there, 8th thou. Don't worry about there. There, 9 thousandths. 9 thousandths doesn't go in. Just starts to go in right there. Right there. I can kind of force it part way in. Force it that way in, so it's getting just past the head gasket. We'll go one more size. 10 thousandths. 10 thousandths are 0.0254 millimeters. There, it's closed up. Can't even force it in there. Just grab on just the very edge. So it's flat within 10 thousandths. So the flatness on this cylinder isn't ideal. If it was around, say, I don't know, a few thousandths or less, like the cylinder head is, I'd be happy with it. But being as large as it is, I'll probably have them take a light skim cut on this, the top of this jug as well, just to flatten it up and help everything seal off. And I think in the long run it'll, make for a more reliable, longer running engine before it's got to be tore apart and rebuilt like this again.